Well, and I think, I guess at this point, let's turn it over to our sponsors to talk a little bit. And I think, Paula, that means that you get to go first.
Well, thank you and good morning. I want to start by saying the usual disclaimer: the talk is all my own and does not necessarily reflect the official views of the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. I want to thank the academies. I find it truly remarkable that we have all 3 academies participating in this study, and that's really extraordinary. I also want to thank the co-sponsors, from my colleagues at the EPA, NASA, and NIH. I'm delighted that there is so much interest in that we could all come together and fund this 3 academy study. I also want to thank the grantees, the reviewers, my advisors, the Sloan staff, and the trustees, because while I stand up here and talk about this very exciting program, it's not just me. I'm just the front for the foundation. And I also want to thank the committee for saying yes to serving on this, and I hope that you like it. There are going to be 3 parts to my talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sloan Foundation, since some people here do not know what we do. Other people here have received lots of grants. Then I'm going to explain what the objectives were from the program, and then I'm going to give you just a few tidbits on our findings. Okay, so here we go. So what is the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation? We're a New York City-based philanthropic organization. What that means is we have money. We have about $1.8 billion in assets, and we give grants, approximately 5% of our assets, in the broad areas of science, technology, and economic performance. We support original research and broad-based educational efforts. So, for example, you've probably heard of, on PBS, we fund a number of programs there. We have a strong interest in the development of early career scientists. You may be familiar with Sloan Research Fellowships. Maybe some of you have been recipients for very early career scientists. The way we work is we develop strategies. We decide to tackle an area. We put together a white paper, advisors, we get it vetted in all sorts of ways, and then we invite proposals. We rely on our advisory committee and peer reviewers to ensure high-quality proposals. We use the review process, we blind the negative comments, and then share them with the PI so that, for the most part, that will strengthen the proposal. On rare occasions, the proposals do not make it. But again, having this whole system of advisors and reviewers, and then internally, a lot of people, very good people, we generally get very high-quality proposals. And the foundation, not just in the particular program that I direct, the microbiology of the built environment, but in other programs, it's common for us to partner with federal agencies and industries and so on. In general, when we are supporting a scientific field, we generally support work for 10 years. We've supported the Census for Marine Life for 10 years, the Deep Carbon Observatory is another 10-year program, and again, the Microbiology of the Built Environment program is another 10-year program. So now I want to give you some context. People spend 90% of their time indoors, and most people who aren't familiar with this fact start to challenge it, and then I say, okay, start doing a time study. Okay, I walk to and from work, but how much is that? You know, out of 24 hours, most of the time I'm either at home or I'm in the office. And back in early 2000s, I was directing the Sloan Foundation's bioterrorism program. And one of the things that we were trying to do was, given that people spent so much time in buildings, what could buildings do in some way to reduce the chance that the inhabitants would become, if we were under attack, the inhabitants would come in contact with anthrax or whatever horrible agent evil people were using. And as we started working in that space, if you think of the anthrax as the needle in the haystack, we said, well, what is in the haystack? And so we invited proposals from 2 very prominent life scientists who had been studying outdoor environments, that is Craig Venter and Norman Pace, and said, are you willing to move indoors? And they said yes. And they wrote proposals which were reviewed and funded. And then they started working. And it wasn't so easy. Again, this very exploratory phase is there. All sorts of different contamination problems. But basically, we learned enough from the early work that we decided that we should actually really have a full program with a full strategy. So in order to do that, let's really think about moving people who are studying the Sargasso Sea or hot springs at Yellowstone. If you're going to move them into a room, let's look around the room. Okay, someone designed this room. It has an HVAC system. That was designed, it's being operated. Someone picked out these materials. I don't know what choices they made, but I bet they weren't thinking about the microbiology at the time. Although I bet on the backs of the carpeting, people were thinking about microbiology because often carpets are treated with all sorts of antibacterial agents that we're not aware of when we're trying to decide, is it polyester, nylon, or wool? How many people should be in this room? Seems like this is the right number. What would happen to the microbiology if we added a lot more? What's the role of humidity? What are the role of air changes per hour? So when you start thinking of the room and the building as an ecosystem, we have lots of different parameters to consider and data that should be captured when you're trying to study the microbiology of the built environment. So I, in collaboration with my advisors, wrote a white paper to really outline the objectives and develop a roadmap of what our grant making would be. And this was in 2009. And we really wanted to push the research frontier spanning microbiologists, ecologists, and building science. And we thought it would be very important to get these very different groups of people, try to get them to work together, and then ultimately develop some sort of reproducible and reliable technique so that people who are not experts in buildings or microbial ecology can enter the field. We wanted to make sure that people understood that this was a very exciting field, so we were very careful about choosing which research targets to fund. So people are very interested in their homes, they're very interested in their hospitals, they're very interested in their drinking water and showers. So being very selective about which environments. So we wanted to pick environments where people live, work, and play. Now, I already mentioned to you that, well, actually, I'm going ahead, excuse me here. We thought it was also very important to develop a small leadership cohort because again, as I told you early on, we're in this for 10 years. We need to work with people early enough in their career that they get hooked on this. So we started with the old guys, okay, but then is and they brought attention to the field. And so really, how do we, to bring along the leadership in multidisciplinary research? Now, if you think about if you went to school in engineering or microbial ecology or computer science, public health, you think about the people you were sitting with in the lunchroom in 8th grade. Okay, now you're a professional. You might not want to sit with those people, but at the Sloan Foundation, you have assigned seating. All right, so we're talking about building, taking all sorts of measurements in the building. We're talking about methods of collecting all sorts of culture-independent data. How do you actually get a handle on all this data? So we thought it would be very important to develop tools, visualization techniques, and so on, so that people can communicate with each other, both internally and externally. We also, again, given that this was a multidisciplinary community, we decided it would be very important to establish a network, again, to get the engineers, the architects, the gene jockeys, and so on, all to begin working together on the issues. And our final objective, if we were successful with the first five of the objectives, we would then be able to pull together a compelling, widely accepted research agenda and find other funders to support it. So what happened? All right, well, it's very exciting. Built environments are truly understudied from this perspective. They're variable, and they're malleable ecosystems. Occupancy, building characteristics and operations matter. And what's great is, okay, we can lure people in, we can invite people to write proposals. Okay, they'll take your money the first time, but unless they're really interested, these people generally are, are very driven and they know what they want to do. So what's good is both the top researchers as well as the public became very interested in the microbiology of the built environment. And I'm just going to highlight 3 papers. I'm not going to go through the science. I'm sure they have plenty of time to review papers and talks, but I think these are just sort of 3 highlights. The first was published in 2012 in an ISME journal coming out of the work at the University of Oregon. And what's so important here is that this paper demonstrates that architectural design influences the microbial profiles. They studied hospital rooms side by side. They were able to open a window in one room and have natural ventilation. The other room was all HVAC, and they had very different profiles. The room with natural ventilation had profiles that resembled outdoor air. The rooms that had only HVAC had the profiles resembled the profiles from humans and included some pathogens. Okay, so now let's move to indoor air. The life scientists are saying, wait, what's that journal? The building scientists, nothing can be better than publishing in indoor air. And in this case, Jordan Pecha is one of the PIs here, along with Bill Nazaroff. So they're taking a really engineering perspective. Let's put people in a room and let's measure the bioaerosols coming off of the people. And they demonstrated that people, the occupants, are emitters, and they're emitting at about 37 million biological particles per hour. And I'm sure Jordan can give you more details, but this was really important to understand that we're all here emitting particles. We've been doing that. It's perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with it. But the next time you're at the gym and the person is next to you spraying the machine with who knows what, it's like, you're still emitting the particles. So anyway, and Jordan and his group with Bill Nazaroff also determined later that resuspension, so if I tramp along the carpet here, I'm going to be resuspending particles. The third paper I want to highlight, okay, we've gone from the ISME journal to indoor air to science. Jack Gilbert is in the room, and this was a very interesting study studying families, so their microbial profiles, and their homes, and 3 of the families were moving. The takeaway message here is when the family moved, their home began to look like them. So these 3 findings are just examples of some of the very exciting work that has come out of the Sloan funded program, and there's lots more, and I'm sure you'll hear about it. So what's been great is the public has been interested in the program right from the start. When we awarded the grant to Craig Venter in 2006. The New York Times immediately, wrote an article, first, the human genome, now New York City air. But again, you can do your own searches. These are just some examples, whether it's from about the space station and the Daily Star Gazette or New York Times, and we're in New York. The Sloan Foundation loves it when any of our topics are covered in the New York Times. Discover Magazine, again, U.S. News and World Report. There are lots and lots of articles, and it's exciting because we want the public to be engaged. This is important. So where are we today, okay, in 2016? We've awarded approximately $45 million in grants, and there have been approximately 130 grants. Some of the grants have been as high as $2.5 million, some are as low as $15,000. We expect to conclude our grant making in 2017. What that means is that we hope that this study is very successful so that there will be lots of other funders in the arena. We established with funding the Biology and the Built Environment Center at the University of Oregon, and then the Berkeley Indoor Microbial Ecology Research Consortium by Merck at UC Berkeley. Again, they've done all sorts of very exciting work. We established a network. Jonathan Eisen runs this out of UC Davis. It's called the Microbiology of the Built Environment Network, or micro.net. Lots of interesting resources there that you may or may not be interested in. Early on, I mentioned our commitment to early career scientists. So we have supported a series of a small number of postdoctoral fellowships as a way of getting top-notch early career people into the field. We talked about, I earlier, data tools and data visualization. Okay, so data and metadata. And Jack Gilbert has one of the best quotes ever. One person's data is another person's metadata. So I think that's important when there are the people who study buildings, people who study microbes, all have to work together. So we've funded a lot of work on analytical tools. Rob Knight's work in Chime and Cheetah, Mitch Sogan, VAMP's work on metadata. And then fungi. Joan was talking early on about fungi. Well, it's great if you're going to do all these culture-independent techniques, but if the sequences are not in the database, if the taxonomy hasn't been worked out, you really don't know what's there. So we funded a lot of work at the discovery-based research on fungi at the University of Ottawa, and most recently funded the Unite database. So here, I'm delighted we've provided partial support this, because I believe that your study is going to be crucial to the future of the field, because you're going to determine what the research directions are. And I thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And again, here's some more, just again, lots of news stories.
I'm thinking that what we should do is probably run through all of the sponsors first, then we can have a kind of general discussion across the different areas of interest of the agencies that are funding the study and with the committee, if that makes sense.
Unless someone has a specific question on the Sloan Foundation per se.
I just want to add thanks. You were very generous in thanking everyone else. Those of us interested in indoor air want to thank the Sloan Foundation for seeding so much of this science. Thank you, Paul.
Our pleasure.